Hey guys, welcome to Boxing Squared for boxing news and views from around the internet. Jarrell Miller has made no secret that he's not very happy with his current promotional status. Often it's forgotten that he's not promoted by Eddie Hearn. He actually is promoted by Dimitri Salita of Salita Promotions and also Greg Cohen of Greg Cohen Promotions. So they are his main promoters. He's been working with Eddie Hearn on DAZN, different cards for Matchroom USA and whatnot. And Miller has been getting increasingly frustrated with his situation, and we don't really know all the ins and outs of it. But he said a number of things over several months. He's especially displeased with Salita. And his most recent post, the one where he talks about going to football, he says, "I wouldn't have to give these damn promoters an effing cent." And this is just another jab at his promoters that he's not happy with the situation. We don't know what sort of deal he's on, how much of a cut he is giving his promoters, but clearly he's not happy with the increasing paydays that he's getting, the outgoings that are going out to others. He obviously doesn't feel that he's getting a big enough cut of his own money. And this has been a situation where we haven't heard too much back from Dimitri Salita in particular. I mean, Miller was chewing him out at the press conference for the Kansas fight against Bogdan Dinu. It really was a bit unseemly. But someone has taken the bait now. Obviously, it's a little bit too much. So have a look at this on screen here. So Sarah Fina. She is listed as the VP at Greg Cohen Promotions. Greg Cohen Promotions co-promotes Jarrell Miller. Greg Cohen himself, he hasn't come in for a lot of personal criticism from Miller, but in general, when Miller's talked about his promoters and all that sort of stuff, Greg Cohen is lumped in with that. The direct attacks have been more at Salita, but Cohen, he's copped it as the general promoter comments from Miller that have been made over several months. But Serafina, and this was after Miller's post where he said he wouldn't have to give anyone an effing cent if he went to the NFL. So following that post, Serafina, the VP at Greg Cohen Promotions, tweets, "So fighters seem to be delusional and think promoters do nothing but sit back and collect. So who do you think paid for your fights? Who built you? Who put you in the position to fight for a world title? You? ? And then there's 4 laughing faces emojis. But it wasn't the only tweet. There was another one. "And to the fighters who are signed to GCP and are unhappy, let me know. I'll send you a release ASAP, right after you pay back all the money that was invested into you. But if you trash and you know who you are, you can get the boot immediately." So really, there's some thinly veiled comments directed towards Jarrell Miller. It can only be directed towards Jarrell Miller, given he's the one making all these public statements. So it's quite interesting, actually, and I want to address some of this and give a bit of back and forth on both sides here, because in general, I do sort of, support the boxers in terms of them getting paid on time, them getting a fair suck of the sav, getting a decent money, them not having to pay out too much to, their promoters or, several cuts to other people and them left with basically nothing. But in Miller's case, we don't actually know what his deal is. But whatever it is, he's not happy with it. And he hasn't been happy with some of the promotion that's, of recent times from Greg Cohen and also Dimitri Salita. They co-promote Miller, have done for quite some considerable time. And it must be noted that, Eddie Hearn, since Miller has started working with him, with Salita and Cohen, his prospects in the division have picked up some. He's been on a number of cards now, and he's had a couple of soft fights recently for decent money on DAZN against Dinu and Thomas Adamek. And those fights, nothing much fights, but in respect of what he would have got paid for that on the DAZN deal, it's probably as good a paydays as he's ever had in his career. And really with those fights, there was less risk than some of the earlier fights against Johan Dorper, Gerald Washington, and Marius Wach. But there is a good point that Serafina makes here, that the promoters, remember Miller's been with these guys for a long time, they have been building him up, investing in him, spending money, trying to help build him. I mean, people like to say Jarrell Miller has only built his profile up by his trash and other bits and pieces. But Cohen and Salita, they have helped put him in the position to do this. Because remember, Jarrell Miller a few years ago was just a guy who was, with a big mouth. He was going to fights, and you may recall Andy Ruiz Jr. getting in the ring there, calling him out. What was that, 2014, something like that? And a lot of that was falling on deaf ears at the time. No one really knew who Jarrell Miller was then. But Salita and Cohen, for all the talk Miller isn't happy with them, they have managed over time to put him in position and put him in fights to keep taking the gradual steps up. And we can make the arguments now that he's got to sort of top 10 status, that he's not taking the fights that he should be in. But that's not necessarily all on, Miller. It's not necessarily all on Cohen, Salita, Hearn. It's a collective responsibility with that choice to, take lower level oppositions while he waits for a title. And it may end up paying off. He may get the Anthony Joshua fight. But I thought it was very interesting, the point that Serafina made. I actually agree with that to a point. But this next one here, and to the fighters who are signed to GCP and are unhappy, let me know. I'll send you a release ASAP right after you pay back all the money that was invested in you. That sort of threat, that sort of, I actually think this is quite hollow. It's hot here because if Miller is looking at this and he has the backing to do so, or goes to someone like an Eddie Hearn and says, look, we can get out of this deal. If you confront me and then I'll come and work for you, you be my promoter. He could probably easily get out of that deal. So I actually think some of this is bluster. I don't think they would allow him out of his deal, but I think, this is obviously showing some of the frustration that Greg Cohen Promotions, Serafina in particular, has with the situation regarding Jarrell Miller at the moment. I mean, he's torching his promotional status, every week, every second week. It's actually something that's a recurring theme. Salita is wearing the worst of it, but, Greg Cohen, he is involved with Miller's career. He's also getting some of the blowback. And with Miller saying he doesn't want to give up an effing cent if he goes to the NFL, he won't have to pay promoters. He's clearly not happy with whatever his deal is now, however long he's locked in. But some of that also is on Miller. He's chosen a certain deal to be with them for a certain time. If you sign the deal to be with, a promoter for an X amount of time, well, there's no one else to blame but yourself for agreeing to be in part of that. And it is one of those things where often earlier in a career, a fighter feels that they may not have a choice, that this could be the best thing for them financially, because you never know where their career is going to go. Having the security of, say, a 4-year deal or a 10-fight deal, knowing that there will be certain fights bringing in certain money, it's attractive. But obviously in these sorts of situations with Miller, where he's actually sort of coming towards the cream of the division, he's obviously feeling that whatever he signed on to, he doesn't want to be part of anymore because he feels like he's giving up too much now. So it's a double-edged sword. Obviously, signing the deal, you want to be signed with someone. But then obviously sometimes when you get big enough, it can feel like a millstone round your neck. And Miller is expressing a lot of these frustrations in public now. And the fact that it's boiling over like this now, and you have, the VP at Greg Cohen Promotions hitting back via the internet, via Twitter, it's sort of getting out of control. It's snowballing. And it wouldn't surprise me if these tweets and that will be deleted at some point. But obviously I've got it here on screen capture, screenshots as well. So it's one of these things, as soon as it goes onto the internet, it kind of can't be taken back. But when I read that, I thought, well, it only came hours after Jarrell Miller's, latest jab at his promoters about, the not being able to pay them a cent if he went to the NFL. And I thought, well, actually, maybe, Serafina may come to regret having put this up there, because it is also a bad signal to some of your other fighters. And there is some comments here, actually, where someone says, good idea, attack your own. This will improve relations with them for sure, and definitely make fighters know at GCP Boxing is working for their boxers' best interest. And Serafina responded, loyalty is everything in this game. Why should we work for a fighter that only badmouths us and is unhappy? Here goes your walking papers, have a good day. And then the response was, loyalty goes both ways. And she says, sure does, hun. And that it's true, that it's a two-way thing. Clearly now we're seeing it go both ways, and Serafina hitting back here. I'm not sure Miller has actually handled this in the best way possible. Whatever's happening, he's very unhappy and getting increasingly unhappy. And you can best believe that if he does get a title shot, Salita and Cohen are getting a cut. But also you can look at that as that's the payoff for them working him towards a title. So can Miller really begrudge that of them? It is a double-edged sword, and it does go both ways. What do you make of it all? Drop a comment, loud and often. Hit like, hit subscribe, follow me on Twitter, boxing_squared. I'm out.